Today, we're talking with Ofer Lidsky, the founder and CEO of Excellent Brain, a neurofeedback platform for ADHD. So get ready to train those brainwaves to pump up that PFC for greater focus, impulse control, and calm. It's time to supercharge your willpower, blast past distractions, and elevate your brain and life with these tools and insights from the Neurofeedback Ninja, the ADHD Jedi, Ofer Lidsky. Today we're going to talk about ADHD and how to use neurofeedback to improve certain ADHD symptoms. We will also talk about some other treatments, but before we do all that, let's start with what is ADHD? How would you describe it?
Well, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a known disorder in the psychiatry and psychology fields. It is in the DSM, and it is known to probably has a genetic disposition. And people who suffer from this have problems with their attention mechanisms, which means that it's hard for them to stay focused on a single thing, on a single thread of thought for a long time, especially, and this is a very good distinction, when it's something that is boring, not interesting, which means that we can see a kid with ADHD that plays in the PlayStation for many hours and he's really focused because he's playing Fortnite or GTA, and he doesn't have any problems with his focus doing that because this is something he likes, and it's very easy for him to bring the attention in this moment. But then if you take him to do an exam in history, you see a different behavior. Suddenly, he can't even read the question until the end because his brain, jumps to different thoughts, and then he has to read it from the beginning and so on. And then he has to have more time than people who does not have ADHD. And this is basically what happens when kids go from kindergarten to school. And in the first 2-3 years, they have to comply with all the different needs and rules and stuff that schools, throws at you. And then the differences, becomes more distinct. And this is why most of the kids, especially in the US and Israel, get diagnosed at around age 6 or 7 during the first or second grade. And, the bad stuff that happens today in the world, that the drug treatment is the number one solution. And Israel is number one in the world in drug treatment for kids, in Ritalin, Concerta, and so on. And the US is number 2. And I believe that there is something to do about it because it's true that the drug treatment helped different people in a way that it saved their life, really. But if you ask the question, how many people from the kids that get drug treatment should get it, that's a big question. I don't know the answer, but I think there are many kids that can do some other stuff to improve their attention mechanisms and their behavior. And by the way, when you do it in training, then you learn it and it stays with you. So this is how I founded in 2015 Excellent Brain, with a clear vision to make neurofeedback for ADHD accessible almost anywhere, especially in schools, at home, in different clinics, and really to allow a much larger piece of the population to enjoy neurofeedback, which is one of the most effective ways to improve 3 main symptoms of ADHD. One is the attention span, how long you're on a single thread of thought. And the other 2 is reducing hyperactivity and impulsivity in a very effective way and also for a very long time. So it's like a present for a kid, it can really change people's lives.
Okay, so there's these 3 symptoms, attention/focus, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Basically, these sort of executive controls. And you mentioned the pharmaceuticals, Ritalin, Concerta, things like that. Let's start with that, the traditional treatment. What are these things doing to our brains? Why do they even work on people with ADHD? What are their limits, and are there risks involved with this? Or it sounds like you want to promote this neurofeedback stuff much more than these pharmaceuticals. Not that these are bad, but maybe the first way we should go is toward less dangerous things. But and we'll get to the neurofeedback very soon. But yeah, let's talk about the pharmaceuticals.
Sure. So first of all, I have, to share that I'm not a doctor and not a
Hmm.
medical doctor, not a psychiatrist, and everything I say is from my knowledge and from my perspective. And when it comes to drug treatment, you should always consult with your doctor, right? This is like the number one rule. Do not change the drug treatment or do anything unless you consult a doctor that knows what he's doing. But if we come and really look at the mechanisms of how psychiatric drug treatments work, especially Concerta, Ritalin for ADHD, so the active ingredient inside those drugs is called methylphenidate. It's a molecule that when you swallow the pill and it gets to your brain, and it gets to a very special place. It's called the synaptic connections between neurons, where neurons talk. This is where they communicate. It's a very tiny space where neurotransmitters are being injected from neuron to neuron, and this is like the language that neurons speak with each other. And one of the known neurotransmitters that has to do with attention mechanisms is dopamine. And science has found that people with ADHD have some differences in their dopamine levels and how the system works. So this molecule, the methylphenidate, arrives to the synaptic vessel place and changes the dopamine. It creates a thing that you have more dopamine, and the effect of that is better concentration. And this is something that works whether you want it or not. A kid will take the drug, and it will work within 30 minutes whether he likes it or not. I mean, it has nothing to do with his power of will, right? When it comes to neurofeedback, it's a training program that has a lot to do with your motivation and power of will in order to create the changes in your brain that will stay for a long time. So these are big differences between the two methods. Now, as I said, the drug treatment really helps a certain percentage of kids with ADHD. It saved their lives. Without that, they could not go to school. So really, it's something that really helped many people in the world. But today we see the percent of kids that get a drug treatment, and it's really, really large. And I believe that there is a big percentage of them that can do other stuff that will improve their state. And also, by the way, sometimes with the drug treatment. So sometimes it complements each other. It does not contradict each other. And research shows that kids that do neurofeedback with the drug treatment, it's easier for them to do the training program because the drug helps them to do that. And still, it's effective. And they do the training, and the brain learns how to change and how to perform better in these cognitive features that you need in terms of attention mechanisms. Now, the other stuff is that the drug treatment has some side effects. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I'm hearing all over, from parents and from kids and so on about the different side effects. So there is a cost for being concentrated at school. Then I don't know, when the drug goes down, you're tired, you don't feel good, whatever, and so on. I'm not exactly aware of all the different side effects, but there are, and this is the bad side, of course, of the drug. Another important thing is that the drug treatment does not teach you how to concentrate. So 20 years down the road, you're in the university, you still need the drug treatment to be concentrated because you did not learn how to do it. And this is what neurofeedback does exactly. It's a training program that teaches your brain by repetition how to concentrate better. And when you learn something and you repeat it enough times, then your brain learns it. Like, let's say when you first started to learn how to drive, first time you're in a car, it's really hard. You have to concentrate on every move you're doing. But after a few years, you can drive and even talk on the cell phone and eat something all together, and it doesn't require any concentration because your brain already learned it, and it's became almost automatic. Sometimes it's completely automatic. And so this is how neurofeedback works. You learn something, And this something is to be concentrated, focused on a single thing, and how to stay there. So there are two things. First, how to reach that point of concentration where you're concentrated enough. And the other thing is how you stay in that point for as long as you want. So these two abilities are the things that you train during the training program, which you do twice a week for 20 minutes and only 30 times. So within 15 weeks, approximately, you can finish an entire training program for ADHD, which can really change these three symptoms I already told about. And we see people that it changed their lives.
Yeah. Some people listening might not be familiar with neurofeedback and they might be a bit confused right now trying to imagine what exactly is going on. So, yeah, perhaps you can paint a little picture for us of what exactly is happening with neurofeedback and specifically with what you're doing with it.
Sure. So actually, it started in 1924 when a German scientist first. It was the first one to put an electrode on the brain and to find out that there are brain waves, that are being deflected from the brain, and you can measure them. And this was the birth of EEG, electroencephalography, where you can read brain waves and then measure them and analyze them. Now, fast forward 100 years later, let's say in the 80s, scientists started to develop training programs that are based on brain waves and positive feedback. So the thing is very simple. You have to reach a certain brainwave to get the positive feedback. And the positive feedback is in two different ways. One is auditory. It's a sound like a beam, beam. So you got to the certain place in your brain because the computer tells you now you're in the right place. And the other is visual. Something happens on the screen. So it started in the 80s, and then it became more and more sophisticated up till now, where you have systems like the Excellent Brain platform that enables you to train at home. You have a very simple EEG sensor which sits on your forehead. This is where, by the way, some of the executive functions of the brain are in the prefrontal cortex. And this simple device measures your brain waves, transmits it to the computer via Bluetooth. And on the computer, you have a training program which is built out of small gaming activities. Each gaming activity is 2 minutes long. And for example, you have a car on the screen and you have to concentrate to make the car drive. You don't use the mouse or the keyboard, you use your brain power. So at the beginning, it's very exciting because you're like a Jedi. You're concentrating, the car starts to drive. And once you are distracted, let's say you had your mind wanders or you had a WhatsApp or someone rang the bell in the doorbell, then the car will stop because the system identified that you jumped from one thought to another thought and the car will stop. And then you have to concentrate back again to make the car drive. And you have to do it for a whole 2 minutes to make the car drive as fast and as much as you can, and you get points. And that's the basic training. So, and in the platform, you have many games. So it can be a car, a helicopter, a dragon, a sportsman, whatever. There are like over 40 different games to make it a little bit more fun, but it's all the same. You have to concentrate to make something happen on the screen and to be in the right place where your brain waves reflect cognition when you are concentrated enough. By the way, this is represented by two brain frequencies. We train two main things. One is to make the lower beta waves higher, which represent concentration. And the other is to lower the theta waves, which represent mind wandering. All right. So when we are, let's say, in deep meditation or in this place where we are close to sleep, this is the theta, where theta is dominant. And, this is a place where your imagination works and but it's not a place of focus. And one of the symptoms of ADHD is that you can see in brains of people with ADHD that they are concentrated on something, they are in the right beta wave, and suddenly there is a theta wave that appears in the prefrontal cortex. And this is the point of time where their thought jumps somewhere else. It's called, mind wandering. And this is something that really slows your cognitive performance, because when you are trying to solve a math problem and suddenly your thought jumps to another place, what I'm going to eat tonight or whatever, then you have to go back again and and start to do the calculation from the beginning, and this requires more time, which means your performance are much lower, right? And this is something, this is, by the way, one of the most popular symptoms of ADHD, exactly what I just told you.
Okay, yeah, this is fantastic. You're answering like all my questions all at once. Um, so just to kind of review, what are the brainwaves of focus and attention, and what are the brainwaves that represent mind wandering? If I got it right, the theta represents us kind of wandering and being unfocused, and I forgot the other one. So maybe you can, yeah, let's review a little bit.
It's called the beta waves, but the beta frequency is very large. So the lower part of this frequency, called lower beta, is the place where we are in the best cognitive performance, which means that if your brain goes higher to higher frequency, then you become too irritated or scared or anxiety and so on. This represents something that is, it's too much. And if your brain waves go to a lower frequency, then you don't have enough brain power to solve cognitive problems. So you have to be in the lower beta to be in the best cognitive performance, to learn, to solve complex problems, to solve problems, and so on. So if your brain wanders to different frequencies, it will affect your performance, your cognitive performance.
Yeah. It seems like maybe you could, I know this is for ADHD, it's for people who want to focus, but, when you're talking about mind wandering and stuff, I'm thinking, "Ooh, that sounds," some people would want that. I don't know, maybe someone with OCD or something like that. So it seems like you could almost like reverse engineer this whole game thing and also apply it to other things. I know we're going on a different direction now, but have you thought anything about that? Like how we can, what kind of games could we play if we wanted to make our mind wander?
So you're touching a very interesting point, because there is some research on the contradiction between cognitive performance and imagination and being creative. So let's talk about it in another way. You take a kid that finished kindergarten, is in the most creative place of his life in terms of imagination and so on, and then you measure it after 4 years of school, and is in the lowest point of creativity, because school is a frame that takes your creativity out, because you have to be in the frame, and to be a good pupil in order to get your grades and so on. And research shows that this is the problem, because and so I think the solution is the right balance. If you're too mind wandering and in the clouds, then you will not be able to function in modern life in the right way, and enough. But if you're too squared like a robot, then you don't have the other side, right? So I think the balance is the right thing. So you have to learn how to control your attention, but also how to control your imagination and to let it go when it's the right time. So when you're doing an exam in math, it's not the right time to use your imagination, right? This is a cognitive place. You have to bring performance. But when you are creating art or imagining or writing or whatever, then you want to bring this power. So I think the key is really in the balance, and to get to know these two systems and how to be there and how to be there at the right moments.
Yeah. And you mentioned it also helps with hyperactivity and impulsivity. Um, when I'm imagining this game as you are like, doing this Jedi trick where you're staring at something like and like kind of controlling it, looking at that car and focusing on it, and then it moves. That makes sense for the focus. That's certainly focus. Where does impulsivity and hyperactivity come into this?
So in two places. One, you take a kid who is very impulsive. He has like severe ADHD, and he has problems sitting at class. After 20 minutes, he stands up and start walking. And there are many kids like that today. So they have a problem with hyperactivity and impulsivity, with stopping themselves for them different impulses and stuff that happens there. And science shows that the ability to stop yourself, it's called inhibition, and it resides in the prefrontal cortex. So when you train this area and the brain then functions better, then inhibition becomes better and the ability to stop yourself raises a little bit. And suddenly, in places where you used to jump before, you have the ability to stop yourself and you can see a different behavior. And it's amazing. And the other thing is that you have to sit for 20 minutes twice a week and concentrate. No smartphone, no nothing. And for most people, it's not easy. It's 20 minutes, on the screen, concentrating on single thought. And after doing that 30 times, it also helps in impulsivity and hyperactivity because you trained yourself to stay for 20 minutes and, not move and concentrate and be there. So we see kids that couldn't sit in class and now can be in 45 minutes lesson with no problem.
It's like an actual workout, it sounds like you're building that muscle, but rather
Yeah,
than
yeah,
muscle, you're
yeah,
building
yeah.
this part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, and then you get all the benefits of that.
And it relies on your motivation, and when you're doing the training you have to be there, and when your brain runs away to other places you have to bring yourself back, and it's not easy, the training. It's a challenge. Most people can do it. After all, it's only 20 minutes twice a week for 30 times, but it's not easy, and you have to bring your motivation and be there and do the best you can. And if you do it the right way for 30 sessions, you can expect a big difference in your life.
What are some ways that we can? I know we wanna promote this excellent brain, but at the same time, a lot of people that we just won't have access to it at the moment, or whatever, something like that, or they might be just I don't know uncomfortable with it, whatever. What are some things that anyone can just do that, yeah, maybe there won't be the EEG measuring the actual brain waves, or there won't be the positive feedback necessarily, or it'll be milder or something. But what are some things that people can do to train their focus and attention, or actually all of these things, this executive network of the prefrontal cortex?
Well, there are so many things out there that really can make a difference. But first, I will say that why neurofeedback is so effective, because you have the sensor and it's like a mirror to your brain and you get the feedback from your brain in real time. This is why it's so effective. But there are so many other stuff that is also effective, but you don't know where you are, right? You're just doing your best. So, for example, if you will start to play chess twice a week for an hour, you will also train your attention mechanisms and you will get better for sure, right? But you have to do it. Mindfulness is now, it's a big word. It's something very popular also here in Israel. It's a kind of a meditation, right? To be in the now and focus on stuff, let's say in reality and not inside you, or just running this thought and ruminating. So there are different stuff. I believe that also if you go and do karate or judo or stuff like that, it will also help, in different stuff. But then you ask the question, when you have a certain amount of time and money and energy, where do you put it to get the best effect, and to get the best results? And this is why we promote neurofeedback, because if you measure what will I get for the same time and money and effort, that's one of the best things in the world.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about how about just hooking up an EEG device to your brain, I mean to your forehead, and while you're playing just like normal video games, because normal video games you are kind of staring at the thing and you are quite focused, but I guess
For sure.
it's not built for that purpose.
By the way, it also trains your attention in some way. But the problem with video games is there are, too many distractions, and it's fun, and it's very easy to concentrate. And as I said, ADHD manifests where you are bored, where you have to do something that you don't want to do. Because a kid would love to play Fortnite, but he doesn't like to do examine history or learn math. Right now, it's boring. And the thing is that life brings us different things, and some of them are really boring, and you still have to do them. And this is where ADHD really manifests itself. And the big problem is because if you stayed in kindergarten for all of your life, then there's no problem with ADHD because you don't have to learn anything, no school, right? No problems.
So what do you do? It's like you can't make your games. They're sort of games. They're these training programs. You can't make them too fun or too easy. or too difficult either. So it must be a bit of a challenge to make the game kind of boring, but not but kind of fun actually at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, you got the point right completely. So we have to stay on the right balance, that it will not be too boring. And, let's say you just only had a square on the screen and you put
Yeah.
it up and down, you get crazy, even if you don't have ADHD, right? But if we'll develop something like Fortnite, then there's no training there. You will not improve with your attention in school. So the games have to be fun enough, colorful, nice, but the repetition there, they are more of the same all the time. So it becomes boring very fast. After a few training that you did most of the game and you got it, and it's more of the same, then it's pretty boring. It's still nice and it's okay, but it's in the plane of nice, but not fun and and ecstatic or something like that, because then you go to the video games place and you don't have training. The training is not good enough.
Yeah, it sounds like willpower. That's a willpower is what's sort of floating around in my head as you were saying that. So yeah, how does that connect with this willpower?
Now we are diving into the world of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Consciousness is something that everyone has, but nobody knows what it is. So this is something really people are trying to figure it out for thousands of years. And in the past 30 years, let's say it's the first time that science started to touch consciousness. And so if you ask where is the willpower in the brain, nobody really knows, but there is a beginning of some scientific knowledge of where consciousness, let's say, operates in the brain. I think one of the interesting theories was brought and written by Roger Penrose, who is a very known physicist. He's a Nobel Prize winner, and his partner, Professor Stuart Hameroff from University of Arizona. They created a very interesting theory about consciousness, which is called orchestrated objective reduction. I will not get into it too much because it's very complicated. But what they found, and some of it is already proven, is that inside the neurons, we have some special structures which are called microtubules, and they reside in the neurons. And they found that inside those tubules, which look like tubes, and each neuron has like a few millions of them, maybe 10 millions of them sitting there. And they found that inside those tubules, there are quantum effects, which, let's say that each tubule is like a quantum computer. So inside each neuron, you have millions of small quantum computers that do different calculations, because a neuron is a system that gets an input, and does a processing and an output, right? So, and there were different theories on how it's being done. Nobody really knows. But now we know that inside the neurons, there are structures that they have involvement in the processing of the system. And they found out because they studied and really did research on where anesthesia, where is these molecules of anesthesia reach to the brain and turn off your consciousness. When someone goes to the hospital and you have to go through anesthesia and you go through surgery. So these molecules, they get inside the neurons and they stop the quantum effects in the microtubules, and then the consciousness is off. The person is off. Once these materials are gone and the quantum computer comes back to work, consciousness is back. Like magic. Nobody knows exactly what it is, but this is something that is already proven, and that there are microtubules inside neurons, and inside these microtubules, there are quantum effects, and these quantum effects are being affected by different anesthesia drugs.
Oh, but yeah, microtubules. That brings me back to like high school biology class.
They are the cytoskeleton. The microtubules were known to be the skeleton of the cell.
Yeah.
All of the cells in the body have microtubules. They're like, the bones of our body. They are the bones of the cell.
Uh-huh.
But inside the neurons, you have like 10 millions of them, which are just sitting there, and they are not part of the skeleton. And these are the ones who are doing the quantum computing. Really weird stuff, exciting, interesting.
But I imagine other animals and, perhaps even plants or something, this is beyond my, knowledge, they must have these too, so it makes you wonder, like, where how far does consciousness spread?
Yeah, yeah. So they present in their theory that the universe was created by itself or whatever with a prototype of consciousness, proto consciousness. Let's say, for example, let's imagine that there are consciousness particles, which we didn't find yet. And these are the mechanisms that our brain uses to create consciousness.
How does this tie back to ADHD? This might just be a little side project of yours, but, have you tied the 2 together?
Well, I tied it in this way. When you do neurofeedback training for ADHD, as we said, your willpower has a big role in that training program. And your willpower is part of your consciousness. So when you do the training, and you do something, it's actually your consciousness dancing with the brain and doing the training. And this is very exciting because it really connects to some consciousness work, because this is how the training is being done with your power of will. You cannot do neurofeedback in your sleep, or you cannot make someone do neurofeedback if he doesn't want. This is something that has to do with some consciousness mechanisms.
Yeah. This is just a random idea, but like there's things like cold plunges and these hard runs and different uncomfortable things that people do to kind of retrain themselves. And I think in a similar way, it's kind of like that video game where it's not fun, but it's like you kind of like it, and there is the reward afterwards. You do feel great after that cold plunge or the run or something. So there is that. It's not neurofeedback, but it's like natural neurofeedback or something. So these might be other tools into this for people with ADHD or something. I feel like that also trains you just like just getting uncomfortable. It's different than, focusing your eyes on something, but they're kind of related, it feels.
Well, I believe it has to do with the fact that anything you learn requires some work, and you have to learn and repeat
Yeah.
it and whatever. If it's something small, then maybe it's quickly and you learn it fast, and it's something, and you have to learn to be a doctor. You have to study for 7 years, right? So, but anything you learn requires work, and this is the work you're doing. The work requires energy, requires whatever it requires, but there is energy there that you have to put on something in order to learn it, and that the brain will really remember it for a long time, and not that you forget it after 2 weeks, right?
But you need the reward afterwards, right? Something has to feel kind of good eventually, or you're just going to stop, I guess. Well, and the rewards that you're feeding people when their brain waves are in the right spot is some kind of visual sound. What's going on?
Yeah, there is gamification there. So, for example, you get more points if you stay focused for a longer time, and the thing is that you compete with yourself and you try to break your record all the time, and that's a very good point, because you compete with yourself. This is it. This is the training program, and the biggest reward is that, let's say, after around 10 sessions that you do, some things are starting to happen. And suddenly, you read 10 pages of a book instead of half a page without noticing, and you said, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Or you sat down in a lesson for 45 minutes without even noticing that you're doing that. And afterwards, you realize that something is changing, and your focus is becoming better.
Yeah, and that's not going to be the case with the pharmaceuticals. I don't imagine. I imagine you just keep taking them and keep taking them, and it's kind of like a feed a man a fish or teach a man a fish kind of thing going on.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Listen, most of the people never, ever in their life sat down for a moment and thought, what is attention? What is focus? What exactly is happening there? How does it work? Nobody, even old people, I mean, nobody never thinks about it. It's just there and it's working and you're using it the way you're using it, and that's it. Most of the people never did this, or internal research, and really to understand how these things work. And it's amazing. It's exactly like consciousness. Everybody has it. Nobody knows what it is.
Yeah, but I think part of why people with ADHD can't focus is yeah, maybe there's lower activity in the prefrontal cortex, but at the same time, the stimulation is the environment is noisy and bright and very distracting. Everything is like hard not to notice. So even if you are focusing on this car thing, and you're training the prefrontal cortex, what about these other parts of the brain? I don't know what they are, the thalamus or whatever, where we're like getting bombarded by sensory input. So how do we turn down that noise?
Now you're touching a very important point, and let's make a distinction. There is ADHD, which we said there is a genetic disposition, and it's a very known thing in psychiatry and psychology. And there is a degradation in the human attention abilities. And we can see it in many ways. One of them you described the amount of different things that we have to tackle in one day, and the amount of lights and stuff, and it is unbearable. I mean, really think about it. The people who grew up in the 70s and 80s and saw the changes in the world, they remember how it used to be, and how it is now. So if we talk about numbers, there is a degradation of the entire human attention levels. And this has nothing to do with ADHD. This is extra to ADHD. And we can see today that a person, let's say in web marketing, we know today that someone enters a website, you have 2.8 seconds to get him. Otherwise, he's bored and he goes to the next website, next movie, whatever, in TikTok or whatever. You have 2.8 seconds. And so it became really unbearable. I see it on myself. I used to read a lot of books, and today I'm not able to read a book. I listen to a short book or whatever, and I read parts. So you consume small amounts of information, but a lot of them. And it's not like it used to be. You sit down with a 400 pages book and read a book. I mean, I think books have a problem today in the world. And this is something worldwide. I mean, people, because of the screens and the smartphone, their brains changed and the attention levels are very low. Nobody has patience in the world. Things have to be really quick. You have to get to the point, and the world has changed.
That brings up another sort of bonus point. Screen size. I don't know why I'm a bit concerned about the size of screens, but there you can get to one extreme a tiny little smartphone, and then the other extreme, like virtual reality. You were building virtual reality back in like
Yeah.
1988, and I imagine this excellent brain would even be more excellent once that technology evolves and people are using it, and they're doing these exercises in say virtual or augmented reality, basically a larger screen, or in reality somehow if we can design some kind of weird play place like that, some weird sports arena or something. I don't know how that would work.
You're touching a very, very, very nice point, because first of all, there is a difference between projected light from a screen and reflected light when you read a book, right? When you read a book, the light is reflected on the book and to your eye. When you're on a screen, it's a projected light. And there is a difference there, first of all. And nobody knows a lot about it, but there is a difference there. Now, in terms of VR is a different ballgame. It's not like a big screen. VR really changes things in the brain. There are a lot of research in VR. I work with Professor Pasig from Bar Ilan University in Israel. I did different projects in VR. And we know, for example, something very interesting. You take a person and you let him do an IQ test in real life, and then you let him do it in VR, and in VR he's better. So your IQ is better under VR. Something changes there, and different things happen. So what we did in Excellent Brain in terms of VR, we developed a proof of concept, a prototype, where you do a neurofeedback game inside the virtual world. So for example, you put the headset and you put the EEG sensor and you're inside the world. Let's say you have a helicopter and you can see 360 and you concentrate, the helicopter starts to fly. It's very, very nice, very exciting. Currently, at the current stage of the market and technology, it's not practical. People don't have a VR headset and an EEG sensor at home, and that they will be able to do it in a practical way or at school. It's not there yet, but it's getting there. VR will be, more usable when the devices will be smaller and so on, and as well, and the EEG as well. So I believe there is a certain point in time in the future where neurofeedback will will be inside the virtual world.
Yeah, and this might be a hard question, but you mentioned how VR is actually the screen is not larger, and then I got thinking, obviously, yeah, it's actually it's much smaller. This is two little lenses, but the perception is you're in this giant world, so it like weirdly hacks your brain. And I just got fooled by it. I was like, oh, this is a giant screen. I'm like, look at the thing. Those are tiny little lenses. Uh, yeah, the question is how what's going on there?
The brain believes that's reality. There is a problem with virtual reality that is called cyber sickness. It's people, they get sick and they throw up under virtual reality, especially older people that didn't, they don't have experience with 3D worlds. They didn't grow up with PlayStation and so on. And you put them inside the 3D world. And the problem is very simple. It's exactly what happens on a ship, but the other way around. When you're at sea, you're in a ship, your eyes see the floor like it's not moving, but your ears, your balance feels the movement, and then you get sick. This is sickness at sea, right? With virtual reality, it's the other way around. In virtual reality, your eyes see the floor, everything is moving, but your body doesn't is standing. So there is a contradiction, and you get sick and you throw up.
Yeah,
So you get nausea. So this is one problem in virtual reality that they didn't solve it yet completely. By the way, kids have it less, but adults have it more. But you can, you put a headset, and after 10 minutes, you get nausea.
yeah.
For a lot of old people.
Our body's out of sync with what we're seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
What about smartwatches? I know I've interviewed a couple people who are using the smartwatch and not EEG to do not this, but other things like reducing stress or figuring out what people like, their emotions, using HRV specifically. So I imagine you probably looked into the smartwatch and HRV, but you chose to go this EEG route where they are on the other side. They're like, no, the EEG is not good for measuring what we want. It's only measuring the PFC. We want something, you know, deeper or something as they describe it. But I don't know if they're right or you're right or whatever. But yeah, what are your thoughts on HRV and the smartwatch data?
So what you're talking about is called biofeedback. There is neurofeedback and there is biofeedback. They are like cousins because they rely on the same principle of giving you a positive feedback, giving you some kind of a feedback in real time so you can learn from it and train and change, right? So the biofeedback measures different functions of the body. So like you said, HRV, the heart rate, right? GSR, galvanic skin resistance, your breathing rate, and so on. And these functions really fit, like you said, the world of emotions like anxiety, fear, stuff like that. But if you think about it and think about ADHD, ADHD has to do with the attention mechanisms and cognition. And cognition is only in the brain. So you cannot measure cognition from different functions. You can measure fear, right, from the body, but you cannot measure cognition. So the best place to train your cognition for better performance is the brain, is to measure where things are happening, where cognition is really happening.
Yeah, but I imagine like with ADHD, yeah, there's a cognition thing going on. But is there any bodily emotion type thing that you could measure? Maybe it's not worth it. It's like we don't need to hook people up with extra things. It's like I don't know. This is we can get 80% of the results with the EEG. But yeah, is there?
For sure, there will be different things that you can train from your body to improve also ADHD. Probably things are under research. We are also trying in the future to combine neurofeedback with biofeedback for different functions, and it's interesting to research that. But currently, at the current stage, if you look at the effectiveness, the neurofeedback is the most effective. In the future, when you combine more stuff, you will probably be able to create maybe even more effective different types of trainings. Because of course the body has a lot of things to tell us and to train us, of course.
Are there any other symptoms of ADHD that Excellent Brain can't really address? That maybe you would like to be able to, but just the technology isn't there or whatever.
For sure. First of all, there are many people who think they have ADHD, or maybe they even were diagnosed incorrectly, and they have problems with their attention, but it's not ADHD, it's something else. For example, someone with severe OCD, right? The OCD affects your attention. You have problems with your attention, but it's not because of ADHD, it's because of the OCD. If you solve the OCD, the attention will be okay. So there are a lot of kids, for example, with emotional problems. They have emotional problems, and this affects also your attention. But then our training will not help them because it's a different, the source is different. It's not in the attention mechanism. It's something emotional, or stuff like that. You have to solve the source, and the attention will be okay. So this is why correct diagnosis is very, very important. And today in the world, the diagnosis is, not so good. In Israel, you get diagnosed in 2 weeks and you get the pills, and so on. And it's a very quick
Yeah.
process.
That kind of sparks another idea. I know this is not a diagnostic tool, but it sounds like what you're saying is you notice sometimes, well, this thing isn't working right. And you can still see their brainwave activity. So it could become a diagnostic tool. I know we're not making claims, medical claims or anything like that, but it seems like it has that potential.
I can tell you we are already testing different stuff regarding that. Of course, it could be um, as an added value for assessment, and in the future, it might be even a standalone assessment tool for sure, because you can, of course, learn a lot from the brainwaves and compare it to other brainwaves, and then get some results and know more information. And it's very interesting because the brain is the most complex system known to humankind in the universe.
Would it would there be any point for like people who don't have big focus issues to still use this? Maybe people might want to prevent cognitive decline or something, or maybe they're getting towards dementia or something. I imagine these people might benefit from it too. It might be too overwhelming if your dementia is like full blown, but I think we all have attention issues, and we all want to at least prevent this. So I imagine, yes, it must be able to be used for sort of preventative measures, but it might also be able to be used for even more severe conditions, things like dementia, Alzheimer's. But that might be too late. That might be overwhelming for them.
So dementia and Alzheimer are big words. As far as I know, there are no known solutions for these. They're uncurable, especially Alzheimer. So we still have to study a lot about the brain in order to understand that. But what people are doing, the elderly people, they are doing different training to the brain in order to retain their cognitive abilities, right? To slow the degradation. And this is something that you really can do with Excellent Brain. And we already did that in Israel in elderly homes, and also in a few more countries with people. I think the highest were 87 people with the age of 87 even trained with that. Now, the scientific claim is it is something that competes with Sudoku or chess, or doing something with concentration. But the advantage is that it's something that is measurable, because if you ask someone who is 80 years old, how much Sudoku did you train this week? You will not get a scientific result. You will not know the right times and how much really training he did. And using our system, it's something, very short, very measurable. And this is why it's more effective than the other stuff. So yeah, like you said, this is something that can really help people in the third age that would like to retain their cognitive abilities and, slow the degradation. And anyhow, I always suggest anyone to use their brain as much as possible. There is a very known sentence in neuroscience called use it or lose it. And this is how the brain works. When you use functions, they stay and they even become better. When you don't use them, they degrade. So use your brain as much as you can, and it will stay working fine.
Yeah. Um, you've done things in all kinds of fields, from the blockchain to genetic sequencing, and now you're doing ADHD. So I'm kind of curious, like what happened, what drew you into wanting to solve this problem?
Well, I got to this problem of ADHD in a very interesting way. About 15 years ago, I got to know that there are off-the-shelf EEG sensors that you can buy and connect your brain to the computer at home. And as a very curious guy, and I love science and I study all the time, I bought different sensors and started to study this field. And from that, I got to neurofeedback, and I went to the university and studied neurofeedback. Now, the other place was my son was in special education in a small class. And from there, I got to know what's going on in schools, and how big is the problem. By the way, ADHD is the biggest problem of education today. And suddenly everything connected. And I said, there is neurofeedback, there is ADHD, there is this problem. This is one of the best solutions in the world. Just make it practical, accessible, affordable, and we can make a big difference. And this is how everything started in 2015.
Yeah, and if people want to get this or they want to connect with you or learn more, where can they go?
Well, first of all, if you search my name, Ofer Lidsky, you will get a lot of stuff. I also write articles on Forbes and so on. You can search Excellent Brain. You can search me on LinkedIn. Today, there are no problem of finding me or my company.
Yeah. It's kind of a silly question we ask at the end of each interview, right? But it's like, oh, let's ask it anyway. Basically, people can Google. But yeah. Well, I appreciate your time today. I learned a lot. This gets me re-excited about technology and science and stuff. Well, I've been excited about science, but yeah, it gets me more excited about the technology side of all this. Yeah, thank you once again. I'm looking forward to hopefully trying it someday. But if not,
Sure.
and until then, I will just kind of close my eyes and do some kind of a mindfulness or focus meditation or something like that. Thanks, Ofer.
All right. Thank you for inviting me, Michael.